Hi, I'm Gabby. Welcome to Watercolours for Wellbeing, a time to connect deeper with yourself in a gentle and refreshing way as we explore the wonderful medium of watercolours. For this class, you will need a comfy chair and a desktop to sit at. You'll also need several pieces of white copy paper, and a thicker piece of watercolour paper is optional. You will also need, for your class, some watercolour brushes, 1 to 3 of a small, medium and large watercolour brush, and these need to be really soft. As well as your brushes and your paper, you will need your watercolours. I'm going to be using a Microdor palette, and I'll put some more details in the links and below so that you can really look in detail at the things that I'm using for this class. And you'll also need 2 big jars of water, clean, fresh water. It's really important to have clean, fresh water when you're using watercolours. And an absorbent cloth, something like an old face washer to dab up any spills or to wipe your brushes on. So please take your time to gather your materials and set up a nice space for you to paint in, somewhere in good lighting and with a good comfy seat. You might like to light a candle, or you might like to put on some relaxing music in the background, or you might prefer to work in silence. Either of these is fine. This is your practice, so we'll do whatever works for you. During this time, there's no right or wrong. You can use as many pieces of paper as you like. This time is for you. So, go wherever your paint and your imagination leads you. This is a safe place to express, to play, to observe, and to grow. So let's get started. These are the brushes I most commonly use when I'm using my watercolours. I've got a large, soft brush, and another spare large soft brush, a medium soft brush, and a small soft brush. And these are perfect for what we're going to do with our flow and our details and our large areas as well. So the main thing I'm looking for in a brush is that it will absorb a lot of water and that it will be able to move easily on the page, so I can push down and make it large and pull it up and make it small. So it needs to have a fine point at the end as well. This one is my more expensive one. It was about between $30 and $40, and it lasts a very long time because I look after it. And also it's got a beautiful tip and a nice round tear-shaped bristle. When I first start my watercolours, the first thing that I want to do is be present. I put both feet on the floor, I sit up in my chair, and I notice where I am. I notice a few things around me, and I do a couple of just deep breaths, noticing my breathing going in my nose and out through my mouth. I relax my shoulders, I relax my jaw, and relax my eyes. And become aware of my feet on the floor and my seat and my hands. The next thing that we're going to focus on is just how we hold the brush. It may vary depending on what you have. If you have a really big, heavy brush like this one, you might want to just between your middle finger and your thumb, use them as the main holding fingers, and one underneath there to really support it. And this one's more of a directional kind of brush, and letting the weight of it fall down into your fingers as you hold it, and about halfway down the brush or actually it's about a third of the way up from the bottom of the brush. We're also going to hold it loosely, just gripping it loosely. Have a relaxed wrist so that you can just move the brush freely. So you might just practice holding the brush loosely in your hands. Feel the weight of the brush. And then connect back with your breath and just breathe. Now, many of you will know already about loading your brush. So we dip it into the water, fully submerging the bristles. Then just allow it to drip back into the water. And that's called a loaded brush. It's loaded with water. We also want to make sure, something I didn't mention, that our water is clean and fresh so that it doesn't contaminate the watercolours in any way. So after our brush is fully loaded with water, then we can moisten our palette. So choose a colour, any colour, and dab it gently with the side of the brush, drawing it towards you and pulling it and turning it. So you can just use your fingers to gently push the brush around in a circle. So we just dab and drag it towards us. And as I've said before in my other videos, the brush is like a cat. We don't want to pat it so its fur goes the other direction. You want it to be all smooth and all the bristles in the same direction, neat and smooth. All right, so once your brush is fully loaded, I want you to spend some time getting to know your paper, your brush and your paints, especially the types of things your brush can do. So maybe just try filling the page with different marks. You'll notice that when you first start out, your paint will be quite dark and very, very wet on your brush. So practice laying your brush down just gently and slowly. You might use the tip of your brush. See if you can paint with your brush facing upwards. See how tiny you can make your brush strokes. As you're making the brush strokes, think, what does it remind you of? And just allow yourself to breathe. Think about connecting with the colour. What does the colour remind you of? The colour might even influence the type of marks that you're making. Practice laying the brush down. See how wide and how long you can make your brush strokes. You might notice that the paint on your brush is becoming lighter and paler. Go back to painting over the top of some of the other lines. Let your curiosity lead you. Let your interest. What is your interest? What do you notice about this? Can you make it darker? Can you make it lighter? At any point, if you need to add more paint to your brush by reloading, if you just discovered that it didn't have enough paint on it to do this, that's okay. Just put some more water on your brush and reload again. I'm just going to keep on going with my marks, just noticing. Now I've noticed some things that I've noticed about my marks. I've noticed that when I lie my brush down in a dab, I've noticed that the shape of the brush will determine the shape of the mark that I've made. And because my brush has started to dry out and it doesn't have as much paint on it, I'm noticing some really fine little scratchy detailed marks at the end, and it's still quite dark at the point. I've noticed that the points where I lay my brush down is quite dark, and I've also noticed that I can make really fine marks with the tip of my brush. I can make longer ones too if I just keep on going. I've noticed that when I hold my brush up, I can use it more like a pencil, and when I lie my brush down and push, it makes a thick line. What do you notice about your marks? What do you notice? How do they make you feel as you use your brush? Let the brush, the lines of the brush, influence your breathing. Remember to breathe in and out. Now, when you've really reached the end of your brush to its capacity, so once it's totally run out of paint on your brush, once it's all dried up, the mark will be very different, and it's actually called a dry brush effect by the time you get to this kind of stage. But like I said, this brush holds a lot of liquid, so my brush has been going for a long time. I'm actually going to change my brush colour. Changing your colour is very simple. We just fill it up with water again, giving it some time and move it around in the water to release some of the colour that's in there. Then dab it. I'm going to change my colour to a harmonious colour. Harmonious colours are next to each other on the rainbow or on the colour wheel. So in my case, I'm going to use blue and green. You can choose any colours you like and notice whatever colours make you feel good. What are the colours you're drawn to? Everything is something to be observed and noticed. When we start out on our page, our aim is to play, to breathe, to reflect, to notice. So now that our page is slightly wet and has some colour on it, we can try some different marks, different types of effects, and just notice what happens when you put a different colour over the top. What happens when you do tiny little tiny dots. Try repeating some of the marks you made before. Lie it down, lift it up. Remembering to hold your brush loosely and slowly, and breathing. What happens if you lie your brush on its side and push it? What kind of marks does it make? What happens if you use fast brush strokes, flicking? What happens if you hold it higher up on the brush? How does that make you feel? What does it remind you of? You might notice different thoughts and feelings as you change your brush marks. These brush marks are reminding me of, fast rain, and also the colour as well, driving down on the earth. What do you notice about your brush strokes? Come back to your breathing, notice your breath as you're filling up the whole page. You might notice some areas that you really like. Now I'm just playing, filling in an area because it feels nice to fill in an area. And letting out a big breath. The paper I've used today is ordinary copy paper, so it doesn't absorb a lot of liquid. So as you might notice, it's starting to buckle because it has a lot of water in it. So when you're choosing your paper, you might think about, if you want to be painting lots of layers for a long time, choosing some thick watercolour paper. If you are happy
to just do a couple of layers like I've done here, then copy paper is just fine. So I'm going to choose another colour. Sometimes it's hard to tell what colours they are until you get them wet. Okay, that's a good one. So I'm dabbing and turning, making a paste with my brush. I'm going to choose one final layer on my paper. This time I'm choosing the areas on my page that are quite wet, and I'm allowing the paint to really run into the other colours, watching them as they bleed, watching as they merge together, and then holding my brush up really high, trying to get a nice fine line as well. I'm going to empty some of that out because my brush is so full and very wet. So I'm going to empty some of that out by dabbing it and turning it on the edge. You can also use a piece of terry toweling or just any kind of absorbent material to empty some water out of your brush. Or if you put too much on the page, you can dab your page with your piece of material as well. Wow, so I'm noticing some beautiful effects. The way the dark watercolour starts to blend and leach into the paper, and blending in with the others makes a kind of a fan or coral effect. You can also put your pinky down on the page to support your hand to give you more control. So I'm going to start doing some more controlled lines. If you put your hand on the page, you can damage the paper or move the paint around in a way that you might not like. But if you just put your pinky down, it's just a little tiny bit touching the page and shouldn't interfere too much. And then you can just have that stronger, more confident line. I'm just moving it around like a pen now. Pushing down, letting go. What do you notice about this layer? What do you notice about the marks you're making? What do they remind you of? And remember to connect back with your breathing. You might be noticing some shapes that remind you of something in nature. Maybe it's water or a leaf, or a flower petal or a shell. Or in my case, I've noticed that there were some bamboo kind of marks earlier on, but now I'm noticing some more little leaf shapes. So I'm actually joining some things together and letting my imagination and my curiosity just lead the way. In my intuition, there's no right or wrong. Just go with the flow of noticing. And if you do something you don't really like the look of, it doesn't really matter. We're just playing. If you don't like it, move on to a different place. If it makes you feel uncomfortable, you can even choose a different page. You can change your page at any time. You can change your colour at any time. This is your practice. This is your painting. There's no right or wrong. It's just whatever you notice, whatever feels good for you. Find places on your page that have nothing. Maybe some areas that would look good with some more colour. And if you're even noticing some areas where you like having nothing on there, you can leave it like that. You don't have to fill up the whole page. So I'm going to take another colour now, another one of my blues. I'm going to just fill in some very, very pale colour. I'm going to fill in some, oops, that's not as pale as I thought it would be. I just add some liquid. Might not even need any watercolour on my brush, just using water, going back into it. Just seeing what happens when I put water over the top of the watercolours that I already have there. Noticing if it will pull the colours along. Maybe it will reawaken the dry watercolours that have already settled on the page. What will happen? We're always experimenting in this stage of just playing and watching, noticing what happens. This is where we learn the most, when we're free and playing and noticing. And remembering to connect with our breath and breathing. So at this point, I invite you to step back, put your brush down, rinse it out. Never leave your watercolour brush standing up in your water. This will damage the brush by bending the bristles. So what we want to do is empty the brush of any colour, then dry it by dabbing it and pulling it on the side, just gently, and then lying it down so that it's resting. And that is a safe way to keep your watercolour brushes so that they don't get damaged. Now I invite you to look at your picture. Really sit back. You can even stand up at this point. Take a breath and just let the image before you soak into your eyes and relax. Let your eyes scan around on the page. Notice the colours, the marks, the patterns, the tone, and the shapes. Just let your eye wander around, maybe from, top left. You might follow anything that takes your curiosity, anything that distracts you, anything that jumps out. My eyes led to these dark points here, and then this dominant darker line drags my eye down there, and I really notice that, and I'm really enjoying the way the dark blue and the light blue and the green are separate colours, but there's also that they're starting to entwine together as well, and I find that very interesting. I also know that from my experience of playing and making watercolour that as it dries it will change over time, so it might not look the same when it dries, but I'm really appreciating it now. So I want you to look and notice, what do you appreciate? When we're looking at our page, we're not looking with judgment. We're not looking harshly. When we look at our page, we are accepting. We're accepting what is on the page. There's no right or wrong. We look at the marks. I'm looking up here, for example, and I'm noticing how they make me feel. These strong, bold, fast lines. I can tell that they were painted with that intention, that they were a flick mark, and they make me feel like looking over that direction. So as you're looking around the page, notice how you feel when you look at those marks, and notice your breath, and then just breathe into that. Allow that thought and that feeling to sit with you, and just let it sink in and breathe. The watercolours have dried, and I'm looking back at my artwork now and noticing the way my paints have changed. We started off with copy paper, so it's very thin, and as a result, the water hasn't sunk in. So it's changed some of the lines to be have pulled on the edges and made an outline. And that's quite normal, and it can do that with thicker paper as well, depending on your paper. So from looking at your marks on your page and the way the water has changed the marks after you've made them, just spend some time noticing what has happened on your page. Where has the water taken your marks? How is it different to when you first put the mark down? So just spend some time using your eyes to travel around the edges of different things. Try and notice whether you put that colour first, second or third, in which order you put them, how much water you used. And just breathe. Remember to relax your shoulders and relax your breath. From all the experimenting and playing that you've done on this piece of paper, I want you to choose some of the colours, maybe 3, maybe 1, maybe 2. Choose some colours that resonate with you. As you start to use your brush again, try and remember which brush strokes did you enjoy using. Feel free to play, feel free to explore, feel free to try new things. This is your art practice and you get to choose which direction it takes. When you think you've kept on going with your artwork and you feel a sense of completion, or maybe you feel tired and you just really want to have a break, sit back in your chair and reflect on the different parts of your picture, noticing what's on the page and pausing for a moment when you see something that draws your attention or connects you to a feeling that you're enjoying. And remember to breathe. I'm going to finish my painting here as I feel a real sense of aliveness, that there's lots to look at. There's lots of things that I've let go. I enjoy looking at it just as it is, and I feel a sense of completion. So if you can reach that place with this artwork, then that's wonderful. And you might not finish this artwork, but I encourage you to join me for another art workshop, or continue, if you would like, experimenting on your own. And please message me and like me on Facebook, artist Gabby Willmott, or on Instagram, G Willmott. And please let me know if you enjoyed this class, and I'll make lots more. And make sure you follow as well to keep updated. I'd love to see your work if you would like to share it. Thanks and all the best.